Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the Hard Truth Distilling Company in Brown County, Indiana.
So for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, it's time! Three on the way. Oh! It went in! It went in! And Indiana wins the ball game! Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni! Float game for the win! Ayler's gone. Goodbye, touchdown, Indy! Woo! IU! America! They got a football team now!
Pretty simple. I win. Google me.
You know that I'm the cream of the crop.
Now, from the Hard Truth Studios, here's Jim Coyle.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome into another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you here on this Friday. As you can see, I am not in studio. I am at the Orlando Airport as I am heading to Montverde Academy for some games today. Todd Leary from myjumpshot.com with us right off the bat. And Todd, I am heading down to see one of your proteges, Mr. Trent Sisley, this weekend. Montverde, the Montverde Invitational that is going on. They always have a great group of games, and this year is no different because in this field, Todd, is Utah Prep. And if you folks are familiar with Utah Prep, they have the number one recruit in the country, AJ DeVanza, and they've got a coach you might be familiar with. His name is Keith Smart. He hit a shot, you may remember. Todd Leary's had quite a few good shots as well. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good. Excited to hear about the games this weekend. I will say, be careful, because the last time you broadcast from there and I did your show was for a recruit that did not end up attending Bloomington. So let's hope that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I don't think that's an issue
Yeah,
again.
It's not.
But ironically, funny you mentioned that. There's a kid on this team, Caden Allen, who is very, very highly ranked now. And he had an offer from Indiana, and it just kind of disappeared. I don't know what happened with that, but he announced his 4 finalists the other day, or 4 or 5 finalists the other day, but it's Georgia, Georgia Tech, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. I mean, all good places, but they're all in the South. So
let me guess, he's from the South.
I don't, you know what? I didn't have a chance to look up where he was at. I can't remember where he's from, but I'm like, okay, this dude must be from the South because he's got all of those teams picked. There was one other, and I can't remember who that is, but he's a guard playing with Trent Sisley. But there's a lot of videos that we get to see, and Trent may be really underrated.
Hugely underrated. Yep.
I mean, he just continues to go about his business. But what I like about his game is he reminds me of the guys in your era. He does what it takes. He'll get a bloody nose or whatever. He'll stand out and shoot 3-pointers. He'll go in and throw elbows, get elbows, whatever the case may be. But he has been working on making his game better, and I think he has done nothing but that by going to Montverde. I mean, they're the number one team in the country, and he is getting to play against this kind of talent. And he's doing a hell of a job. He's one of the leading players on this team. In day one of the Montverde Invitational, Todd, he reminds me of Todd Leary. He went 5 for 5 from the field. He was 1 for 1 behind the 3-point line and 2 for 2 at the free throw line. So pretty nice day.
Yeah, and he's a guy like. He's a guy that's just going to make winning plays. He's a winner. He makes the right plays. This is the way you kind of look at this. Out of every draft class or every, graduating class from high school, there's probably 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 at most guys that are going to be like Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey or Dylan Harper. Like, they're going to be somebody that after 1 year, you're going to say, that dude's going to play in the NBA for a long time, and they're going to be that good. And then after those 1, 2, 3 players, there's probably a group of like 30 players that are exceptionally talented, and they're not like franchise type players, but they're exceptionally talented. And when you can find one of those guys, I put Trent Sicily in that category. When you can find one of those guys that's such a team oriented player and wants to win as bad as someone like Trent and is willing to sacrifice and do anything. I said it the other day, like the thing that happened at the end of the Maryland game, whether you want to call it confusion or whether nobody understood the play, they were all running different plays. Like, the thing that didn't happen is no one sacrificed themselves and went and set a screen and got somebody else open and got somebody else's shot. Nobody was willing to sacrifice themselves. And Trent Sicily is a guy that would sacrifice himself. In that scenario, I think he would have gone and set a screen and got somebody open. Everyone was trying to be the hero. And you know, that to me is why it became so frustrating, because that's not the Indiana basketball I know. The Indiana basketball I know, there might have been 4 guys trying to set a screen, and we'd have been upset that one of them didn't go off and be ready to take the shot. But it was the opposite. He had 4 guys all just trying to get the ball and be the hero. And you know, that's what I think Trent Sicily brings as much as anything. But I don't want that to sound like I don't think he's exceptionally talented, because I think he'll have a long career in the NBA, and I think he's going to have just a career at Indiana University that fans are going to be super proud of.
I agree 1,000%. And one of the things I've said privately to someone else is I think that Trent Sicily is going to be a very, very important piece of the group that brings Indiana back, or at least heads in the direction of where they want to be. There's no doubt to me that a change is coming at the end of this season, and that's going to bring a lot of other things. But I think that will be the jump-off spot, just like you saw what Kirk Cignetti did in football, which is still amazing. But in basketball, it's a hell of a lot easier, and it will happen quickly at Indiana. I'm very convinced of that, just because of the resources, of the talent that comes out of the state. I mean, they've got. The Indy area has 2 McDonald's All-Americans this season, and Indiana didn't get any of them, unfortunately. But they've got to change that. They've got to start getting those guys. I know the portal's there, but you've got to have both. You've got to have the Trent Sicilies of the world, and Jalen Harrelson would have been a pretty damn good get, as well as Mullins. So you've got to be able to mix both of those in, and I think that will start happening again as by next season.
Yeah, and I'll just say this: like I think the decision used to be a lot easier. Like, you know, back in my day, the decision on where you were going to go for school, I think, was an easier decision. There are way more factors that are involved in it now. One of the interesting parts is Indiana is in a great position in those categories, NIL money and what they're able to spend, and the fan base still being loyal. I turn on some of these games and see, I think I turned on Ball State the other day, and I turned on another game. I mean, the stands were not empty, but they were not half full. And that's, you know, that's just something Indiana has been fortunate enough to not have to deal with. And kids want to play in front of big crowds, and not just for the big games, but for all the games. And so I think Indiana's recruiting going forward is in a good spot. Having Trent Sicily coming in is honestly, it's a saving grace right now, because if they had no recruits as of right now and totally reliant on the portal, with what you're saying, you're promising there's going to be a change. I mean, unless they turn it around, I think we're all hoping there's going to be a change, just from the standpoint of, if that change is the same staff, but they approach things differently, I don't care. Just things need to be approached differently. And having Trent Sicily is just a monumental factor in being able to do that. Because without him in this scenario right now, I think Indiana's future would be pretty bleak.
Yeah, and I agree with all of that. And he is a prototypical Indiana kid.
Yep.
And not that you have to have that. I'm not saying this team has to be all that, because it doesn't. It can't. You have to have a mix of everything. You've got to have a mix of the Indiana kids that understand and know the tradition, but you got to have talent no matter where it comes from. and who it is. And even when you were playing, that was still the same case. Reynolds, they were regional guys, but they weren't all Indiana guys. And Knight didn't care, but he knew what he wanted. It just takes the right talent. You have to have the right coach and the right players, both of those things to go in. And this is a different time now. But everyone talks about all the NIL that. No, man, look at the other teams that are not having problems. It's not that. If you're having problems, you're having problems. That's the issue. It's not that they're getting paid, although that's, a different scenario, but that's not the issue that is causing this. It's proper personnel, making sure that they know what they're doing. Matt Painter, I'm hoping I can get it pulled up, but he kind of threw a little shade at Woody, it seemed, yesterday in his availability for the game tonight. Made a comment that was talking about his players, but he said, if you don't have it figured out by February, you don't know what you're doing. And he said, if we run a play out there and they don't know what's going on, he goes, I might as well quit coaching. So you can take that to whatever you want, but that seemed like a shot over the bow to me.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. I know Painter well enough to know that's not really what he's trying to do. I think he is saying exactly true. I think something that we would all say, if your team doesn't have it figured out and especially doesn't know what play you would want to run in that scenario. Like, let's take that exact game last week out of context. And let's just say at this time of year, your team ought to know what play is the best play we're going to run when we need a basket at the, in that situation. And yeah, I know the coaches and staff can call plays and do whatever, but at this point in the year, your team kind of better already have it figured out. And, if you don't have, you're probably in trouble. And what have you been working on for the last 3 months in practice? And so, yeah, I mean, that scenario last weekend that to me is what the problem is. Like, they didn't know what they were running. I've been saying this all year long on your show. I don't think the players completely understand what it is they're trying to accomplish. I know the overall big picture. They're trying to throw the ball inside. Okay, I get that. I think they get that. I think we all understand that. But I don't think that they have broken down enough to understand what it is they're trying to accomplish and the best way to accomplish that on the offensive end of the floor. And that's why we have games when the ball's going in where we look decent and games when it's not going in and we look like we don't know what we're doing. And, that particular 30 seconds at the end of the game last week, I think summarized where Indiana basketball is and not just for this season, but the last couple of seasons. And that's not an organized, good place to be. And they didn't look organized. They didn't look like they knew what they were doing. And they didn't look like they knew what the play was or what was supposed to happen. And I think the end result proves that point. And you just can't, I don't know how you make excuses for that at this point. I mean, it's unacceptable. It shouldn't happen. And, there's 1,000 people out there that are going to say, hey, I coach a 7th grade AAU girls team. And, we know what to run on an out of bounds play and all that. All that's true and factual. I get it. There's no excuse for it. It should not have broken down that way. We get a good look and somebody, we run a play that you can tell what they're trying to run and somebody misses a shot. We can all live with that. That's part of the game. But not what happened. Like, they didn't even run a play. They did nothing. They just basically threw the ball in bounds and the guy shot a fadeaway 3-pointer from the corner. None of it made any sense, and it was just unacceptable.
Yeah, I agree completely. And not only that, a lot of times, even if a play gets busted, broken up, you've got guys that have the ball that know how and are willing to just go make a play. And it was just a complete breakdown. And I'm not blaming any player. I'm not blaming the guys. It was a wreck, and everyone saw that. The sad thing is, it wasted a hell of an effort by Indiana. They played a really good game. Now, you can look at that as, positive thinking going forward, because conventional wisdom would tell you they're going to get the crap kicked out of them tonight at Mackey. And there's no one that would think other than that. But hey, this team still has talent. There's no doubt about that. They have talent. It's can they get it together? Can they run it together? Can they run their lineups? Matt Painter talked about, preparing for Indiana is difficult because you have to prepare for two kind of different teams, which is what I've talked about. When you got Renew and Ballo in there, well, that's a completely different look as when you take him out and put Goody in. Now you've opened up the floor, the spacing, the passing, some shooting. You've got multiple three-point shooters out there if you have Rice and Mbako and Goody in the game at the same time, and that changes what Purdue has to do because they've got those two bigs that they'll run out there. Well, they can't do that if Indiana's playing small ball. So I don't know. I'm not saying that, this is going to be a close game, but you never know. It's Indiana and Purdue, although I don't know that this Indiana team gets that. I know Anthony Leal does and Trey Galloway does, but Ballo's been on three damn different teams. I don't know that playing Purdue means crap to him, and I'm not blaming him for that. I'm just pointing that out because that is normally not the case. You get pumped up for your rival no matter what. So, we'll see.
but I'll say a couple things about that. One, the environment in Mackey Arena tonight will be so raucous. It'll be, I'm going to say, the most insane crowd that Omar Ballo's ever seen. So if that doesn't tell him that it's a big game and if that doesn't fire him up to have a good game, then, he doesn't function like most athletes do. And so that's all the rivalry part of it he's going to need to know. That crowd's going to be nuts. They're going to be screaming. So that gym is so loud. If he can't figure that out quickly, which I do think he will, then that's on him. But I'm going to go back to something you said a minute ago about, you're not blaming the players for the end of that game and all that. I am 100% blaming the players. And I know the coaching staff can draw up all the plays, and I don't think they drew something up that was obviously executed well. But those players, someone has got to give up themselves for the cause. Like you said a minute ago, making plays. Making a play isn't just making a basket, isn't just making an assist. It's not just getting a rebound. Setting a screen is making a heck of a play. And when you've got guys that are willing to sacrifice themselves for the good of the team, then you've really got something that you can build on. And what that last play proved to me is we don't have guys that are willing to sacrifice for the good of the team, because we had five guys all trying to get the ball to all try to make the play instead of anyone setting a screen. Go back and watch that film. Not one person even came close to touching a player from Maryland in a screen scenario. And so it's just like that to me was very telling. And that told me the players are not on the right page when it comes to winning. They want to win. They think they want to win, but apparently right now they don't know how to win because there was no one that sacrificed themselves. And that's the difference between this team and the teams that I played on, because we would have been fighting for, who would have set that screen. Coach Knight would have recognized the guy that set that screen more than he would have recognized, or just as much as he would have recognized the guy who made the shot. And that is why guys like me could end up playing in a big-time Division I school like Indiana, because Coach Knight recognized the small little things, the hockey assist, the guy that got the guy open. And there was nobody on our team that was willing to do that. And that, to me, is the problem. There's a lot of other problems. I think the biggest problem is we didn't have anybody willing to sacrifice themselves for the win. And that's where you got to just revamp the whole roster, in my opinion. You got to wipe them all out and get all new players in here, because no one was willing to do it. And that's frustrating to me. I can't hear you if you're talking.
Hey, Jim, looks like you're
all right. I was muted there. Sorry about that, guys. What does Indiana have to do tonight to be in this game, because they have the talent, but that environment is extraordinarily daunting, and that alone can take you out of your game if you're not prepared for it. And we've seen a lot of times, I'm just not sure these guys are mentally solid in the game, whatever the game is. Oh, we'll have to get Todd back there in a second. I think he is frozen as he's traveling today. But yeah, Indiana takes on Purdue tonight at 8:00 at Mackey Arena, and it is going to be, like Todd said, it's going to be the craziest environment that the Indiana players see all year. Todd, they've got to get through that, and a lot of these guys, like you just mentioned, they've never seen anything like what they're about to see. And because when they're in Assembly Hall, that's their home, but they're about to face the most daunting road environment they have ever been in.
No doubt about it. Yeah, I mean, luckily, Luke Goody, even though he's a transfer in, he's been at Illinois. He knows it. He's from the area, so he's well aware of what Mackey Arena's like. Galloway and Leal, obviously, those guys, and Baco going through it last year, like Renew, like they shouldn't surprise anybody. I mean, you can tell somebody what it's going to be like all you want, but you just really don't understand. I saw an interview with one of the Oregon players last week, and he was commenting on being in the Big Ten and how shocked he was at how some of the opposing fans travel the way that they do and come to the games. And that's part of why, you hear people say the Big 12 or the SEC or the ACC or whoever is the best conference. I mean, part of what makes the Big Ten as good as it is, in my opinion, is because the fan bases, and they travel and they go to these games and they go see them. And I don't think the people from Arizona and, the Pac-12, I don't think they experience that. And so, yeah, it's going to be different for Balo, but you'll adjust to it. It's a different environment. I actually look forward to it every year when we went up there, even though it's that difficult and hard to win up there, because it's just fun. Like when you're in an environment, I remember my 5 trips to Mackey Arena still to this day. And that's because it was such a fun environment, and everybody screaming and yelling and calling you names, and the students are right there by the bench. Like, some of the stuff people say is hilarious. Some of it's offensive as heck. But I mean, we chuckle and laugh at it and get a. So yeah, I would be shocked if Momar Balo doesn't say, "Oh my gosh, that's the loudest place I've ever been," because I can say on all of my trips there, Kansas, Allen Fieldhouse is probably a very, very, very close second, but Mackey Arena is the loudest arena I ever played in by far, all 5 years.
Carolyn Leary says Purdue is not an IU-friendly place to play. It is a different kind of environment.
Thanks, Mom.
She would know.
She does know.
Definitely.
She's heard me bitch about it a whole bunch over the years. So yeah, we it's been a family event ever since I was a small child, the IU Purdue game. So yeah, it's a big deal, and our family's always made a big deal about it.
Purdue, big on hitting 3-pointers. They've got a number of guys, but specifically Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith are just red hot. Between the two, they're averaging over 40%. They're just knocking it down, and they put the ball up a lot. Fletcher Lawyer has put it up 92 times, I think, from behind the 3-point line. Braden Smith has put it up 122 times. So they get the ball up. Indiana has not had the greatest 3-point defense in the last few years, and it cost them against Maryland. Maryland went off again and hit 50% against whoever they beat. Was it last night? But they allowed that. Indiana cannot allow Purdue to get off and hitting 10, 11, 12 3-point shots in that game.
Well, the hard part about that, and this is why I've kind of said Indiana had a little bit of an advantage all year long if they could have shot the ball well. But, you mentioned Purdue as being a team that shoots a lot of 3-pointers. Their main goal every single time down the floor is no different than Indiana's main goal. They want Kaufman Wren or Caleb First or the other big guys that they've had in there that had some injuries now. they want to go inside. Like, that's their main goal. They did it with Edey over the last 10 million years. And that's really the way they're built. Now, they get a lot of open looks from three because of that. And that's what, that I think is why Indiana's recipe, for success on the offensive end has struggled this year, because they would be a lot better off if they could consistently make outside shots. Even though the number one goal is to throw the ball inside, teams could really pack it in on Purdue. You're not in there. Miles Colvin is a really good three-point shooter. Heidi is a very capable three-point shooter. Cox and Harris, they're freshman guys. I mean, they're all very capable of making shots and from the three-point line. And so that makes them, I think, incredibly difficult to defend, because their goal is to throw it inside. Their goal is to score in the paint. But how many times have you heard over the years, the best time to shoot a three-pointer is when it gets kicked out from the inside or after an offensive rebound? And that's what Purdue does. They throw it inside, and their big guys are pretty good about kicking it back out to open shooters. And their open shooters are knocking it down. And that's the difference. Very similar styles in what they're trying to accomplish between Indiana and Purdue. Purdue just has better shooters from the outside and more capable shooters. And that's why their offense flows better than Indiana's, in my opinion.
We've got to take a break. We've got the great Todd Leary with us from myjumpshot.com. For those of you who have kids, know a kid, are a kid, maybe have nieces, nephews, whatever, it doesn't matter. But they need to work on their basketball fundamentals, their shots, their ball handling, whatever, skills of all types. Todd works with a lot of the bigger names like Trent Sisley, like Xavier, Stink Robinson, and many others. It's so that's where you go to myjumpshot.com. Hey, we've got lots more coming up from the mobile Hard Truth Distilling Company, Distillery Brewing Company studios today. Back with more right after these messages.
At Ben Davis Chevrolet and Ben Davis Ford in Auburn, we're your one-stop shop for all of your automotive needs. We have the area's best selection of over 300 vehicles, including new cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs. Plus a huge selection of pre-owned vehicles in stock. And if we don't have what you're looking for, we'll find it for you. We also have top-of-the-line service and parts, plus a collision repair center, and we're competitively priced on everything. For sales, service, collision, parts, and more, we do it all. Come see us today or visit us online at BenDavisChevrolet.com and BenDavisFord.com.
Whether it's a night out with the family, after work with colleagues, or catching the game with friends, Bubba's 33 is the place for you. Bubba's 33 offers a mouthwatering menu of selections that are all made from scratch every day. The portions are big, but the prices are small. And with over 50 big screen TVs, you'll never miss the big game. Bubba's 33, pizza, burgers, beer. If you're looking for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Realty at Cheryl@IndyHomePros.com or 317-701-0838. 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore help you find the home you want today. Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth's sour mash bourbons, sweet mash, and hard road ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company mobile studios today. Todd Leary with us as always from myjumpshot.com. Todd, did you happen to see any Big Ten games in the last day or so? There's been some good ones.
Yeah. I mean, the Big Ten is proving – it's proving how chaotic all of college basketball is. But, yeah, I mean, Maryland, you mentioned a couple minutes ago about that Maryland win, what a big win that would have been and how Indiana let that slip away. I mean, they're on a heater right now, and they're beating everybody. And you know, that it would have been a great win. But, you know, fortunately for the Big Ten and Indiana, you continue to have a whole bunch of good opportunities at quad one wins. And, you know, it's no different tonight. But, yeah, the last couple of days, you know, seeing all the teams, home and away hasn't meant a whole lot. I mean, Ohio State going into Penn State and winning in there. I think Penn State's going to start playing all their games back at home now because they lost on a home game to Indiana and a home game to Ohio State, and neither one of them were in their home arena. So I think they might eliminate those neutral site games going forward.
Yeah, Nebraska, they got a great win last night, knocking off Illinois in overtime. Illinois had a chance to win that game with the ball, and the last 30 seconds, I didn't get to see what happened there, and I looked back up, and it was in overtime. But that's a heck of a win for Nebraska because they're in the bottom of the conference standings down there, and they desperately needed that. And then you've got Illinois. They're playing well, but they've got some losses, man. They've lost to USC, but of course, Kasparas Jokichanis was injured or out sick, whatever. I think Jokichanis, whatever, however you say his name, man. I'm guessing
KJ.
There you go, KJ.
But they've also been playing without their big guy, that Tomislav, whatever his name is. He hasn't played in the last 3 or 4 games, and you know, I think they've lost at least 2 of those games. So yeah, they've struggled a little bit, but I'm telling you, at the end of the day, when the NCAA tournament comes around, Illinois is not a team you want to play.
No, they've got some just great pieces. They're fun to watch. I have not seen Michigan State play this year, and I know that they're good. Obviously, they're 9-0. The question is, who's going to beat them in conference play because they're still unblemished right now.
They'll lose. They'll have 4 or 5. Mark my words. They'll have a minimum of 4, maybe 5 or 6 losses by the time the conference is done. Wow. Look at their schedule. Look at their.
Only got 11 games left.
Yeah, their last 7 games they're going to lose at least 4 of those games.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty. UCLA, they had been kind of Mick Cronin, his team had been on a roller coaster, but they get a nice win last night over Oregon. Number 16 Oregon, 78-52, a season low point production for Oregon. So good defense by
UCLA will do that to you. Yep.
And held them down. So the Big Ten is still, I think there's probably 9 tournament teams in the Big Ten is what they're going to end up with, is my guess. But I'm just wondering how are they going to perform once they get to the tournament? We've heard about the SEC all year long with the rankings and all these teams, and you know they're good, but there's always those great upsets. That's what makes the tournament so incredible. But it's going to be very nice to see what the Big Ten teams can do when they get into March.
This is going to be an interesting year for the committee, and this is why I think Indiana's in a really bad spot with their net ranking right now. That net ranking has been the Achilles heel for Indiana for the last 3 or 4 seasons. And, you know, Indiana, you look at some of the teams in the Big Ten that are ranked way higher in the net, and you know what they've done? They've taken advantage of good opportunities they've had to get quality wins. And that's the one thing Indiana hasn't done. And yeah, they won on the road at Penn State and Ohio State. I'm not taking away from that. That's a big deal. In the past years, they haven't even done that. So that is a big deal. But they've had some opportunities for big-time wins. That Maryland one is going to hurt. That's going to be – that's one that's really you're going to wish you had later in the year. And the net ranking is going to kill IU. But I think from a Big Ten overall perspective, you know, once the NCAA tournament comes around, I think this year the Big Ten has a chance to be fairly successful. And there's just not there's not the great team in the Big Ten, but there's a bunch of teams that are very difficult to play against. And I put Purdue, Illinois. You throw Michigan State in that category. Michigan. I mean, Iowa's even tough to play against, and they're probably not going to make the tournament. I mean, there's a lot of teams that are difficult to play against that once they get to the NCAA tournament, I think we'll have some success. But unless Indiana is able to go on a crazy run, I just don't see that. I don't see how they're going to get their net ranking high enough to be able to make the tournament.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. It's already, there's too much behind it to really be, unless
they'd
you
have
get
to string together
wins.
Yeah,
you got to string together some great wins together. And
if
it happens for them, great. It'll be awesome. But I agree with you. One of the things that surprised me this year in the Big Ten are the wins that road teams have gotten.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. Every time you turn around, it's like, damn, somebody went in there and won. It's like, wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I mean, like, this week is a perfect example of it. And that gives Indiana a little bit of hope, I think. I think that gives Indiana the recipe or the formula for winning is there. Like, you can see other teams doing it. So that tends to be a good factor. But, tonight's going to be a tough one. Tonight I don't hang everything on success or failure off of tonight's game, because this is always a difficult one. It's also an important game for Purdue. They haven't played up to their level of consistency and as well as I know they're used to playing. And so, they're trying to prove some stuff too, and they're figuring stuff out as well. And so, that it makes it a monumental task. And if Indiana could get a victory, I mean, it would be a gigantic one, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the few things that Mike Woodson has accomplished. He's gone into Purdue and won there. I think is he 3-3 against Purdue?
He's kind of got the reverse Ryan Day effect going.
He's got the reverse Archie Miller.
He's beaten the rival. He's beaten the rival, but can't win in the big game. And Ryan Day has struggled to beat Michigan, but able to win the national championship. So yeah, it's been a tough one. But tonight, I just feel is a little different. I think Indiana's going to struggle with this one tonight.
Well, and with good reason. They've got to come up with a way, like I said earlier, to do something they haven't done well all year, and that is to defend the three. But now sometimes teams just have bad nights. It usually doesn't happen at home, but it's always a possibility. You get too geeked up, you get too jacked up, and that can get in your way, but you would know better than anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to the same thing I said earlier. I really feel like, Purdue and Indiana have very, very similar goals on the offensive end of the floor, and that is to score the ball in the paint and get the ball inside, get as many touches in the post area as possible. And, that has led to open shooters that, it's obvious. You can look at the percentages. I mean, Purdue's just a better shooting team than Indiana is. And so that's why they've been more successful. They both have the same goal. They're both trying to throw it inside. But when it gets kicked out or after an offensive rebound, Purdue is just better at knocking down shots. And if those shots go down tonight, it could be bad for IU.
Shout out to Dr. Sam Joaquim. Yes, he always takes great care of me down here. Big Indiana fan and a supporter of Montverde. So looking forward to this. Is my third straight year going to the Invitational. It's a huge event for them, man. They get into it. And I can't wait to talk to Trent Sisley about it, because he's gonna experience, because I've seen this. They rush the floor every year like that. They just shocked the world, and it's like, wait a minute, you guys are the number one team in the country, and they're still rushing the floor. It's like, it doesn't matter. They get into this thing, man. But
I think Papa Sisley is going to be down there too. So look for Big Matt Sisley down there.
Oh, absolutely. And Mom, they're down there taking
Mama
it all
Sisley,
in.
They're all there. Yep.
It's a huge weekend, like I said. This is a showcase. Utah Prep is one of the teams here, as I mentioned. Keith Smart just becoming their coach.
They just didn't Montverde just beat Utah Prep last week or 2 weeks ago?
I thought that they beat them not too long ago somewhere.
I think it was Keith Smart's first game, maybe, as head coach.
Well, I think they're going to get another chance, because I have a sneaking suspicion that is going to be the championship game on Saturday night. which that'll be something to see. I'm looking forward to talking to Keith Smart about this role. I was a little surprised he stepped into this. I didn't know that he was no longer with Eric Musselman.
Yeah. When I saw the bench at USC and saw that Keith wasn't there, I didn't know if maybe he stayed at Arkansas or what he was doing, but I was a little surprised when I heard of that also, but it's a good opportunity. He's a guy that likes to develop younger kids' talent, and he's obviously been successful at that. So I think it'll be a good situation for all of them all the way around.
Who is in the Big Ten? I know Michigan State obviously is leading this thing. Purdue is 2 games behind them.
Purdue's going to win the Big Ten. Purdue will win the Big Ten.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
I'm telling you, Michigan State. I'm a Tom Izzo lover and supporter. Like I admire his work and his teams and all of that. This team has overaccomplished, and I don't think they're very good. I shouldn't say that. They're obviously good. I don't think they're an elite team, and they have a bunch of guys that are willing to sacrifice and make the plays, and that's why they've been successful. I don't think their schedule at the end of the year, they've had an easy schedule up to this point, but the couple of hard games that they have had, obviously they've won. They have no losses in the Big Ten, but I just don't see them being able to finish this Big Ten season out with less than 4 losses based on their schedule.
I can't recall if it was you or someone else that said this, but that Purdue has become what Indiana used to be and wants to be. And that lays right into what you're talking about with being able to win at that level without having an elite team.
Well, I go back to culture. I'm not saying Purdue didn't have the culture back in the 80s and 90s. They definitely did. And Coach Katie is an incredible human and a great coach and created an awesome atmosphere, and the players all loved it and all that. But Indiana had, the culture back in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And, that culture was a winning culture that when you went there because you knew you were going to have a chance to win and you were going to go to the NCAA tournament every year and probably hopefully have a deep run in it. And that was the recipe and what was built. And, when you have that, it's not easy to sustain, but it's a lot easier to sustain it than it is to build it from scratch. And right now, Indiana doesn't have that culture, and they're building from scratch. Purdue does. And their culture, I think a lot of people can identify it. And I don't think very many people, if you asked 10, really loyal IU fans what IU's culture is right now in the basketball program, I think you'd get 10 different answers. And I don't think you'd get that from 10 Purdue supporters. And so, that's the difference to me right now. And hopefully, it's not something you can't create a culture in a week. So, hopefully it's something they just start building on and are able to, down the road, years from now, look back on and say, boy, I'm glad we're not in that position anymore.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully Indiana can make a game out of it. It would be fun just to see a good old-fashioned Purdue-Indiana game like we saw a couple of years ago when Jalen Hood-Schifino made the unbelievable difference in that game. Purdue was number 5 then, a great win by the Hoosiers, but not looking favorable for them, but that's why
winning last 2 years is much more difficult than winning this year. Their team with Edey was much more difficult to beat. And Schifino a couple years ago went in there and just put on a mid-range clinic for everybody. And they're going to have that same type performance probably from more than one person and hope that Purdue maybe has an off night, but otherwise, it's not a recipe. It's not looking good for Indiana. Now, that's the way you play these games, and the Big Ten is what it is. So hopefully they can pull something off.
Let's see. Dusty Banner's asking, what about tomorrow's matchup with Ole Miss and Auburn? I would say who's at home, first of all, because if Auburn's at home, there is no way would go against that squad right now. And even if they're on the road, that's going to be a fist fight. Brass knuckles, the whole deal.
Yeah, they both of those teams are exceptional. Obviously from a talent perspective, Auburn is one of the top three teams in the country from a talent perspective. So, I mean, you probably give them the upper hand on every game. Be tough to pick against them. But it's also, I mean, I'm a Chris Beard fan. I liked his teams in Texas. I've just been a fan of the way he coaches and the way his teams play. And you know, they're going to make a game of it, and they're going to have a game plan that's going to be difficult for Auburn to beat.
Absolutely, brother. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Enjoy watching the game tonight. Hopefully they shock you and
It'd
give
be
you
awesome.
something great to walk out.
It'd be a fun weekend if so.
The great Todd Leary with us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you through the Hard Truth Distilling Company mobile studios. We're back with more right after this message.
Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth's sour mash bourbons, sweet mash, and hard road ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana, as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive. Ugly Grouper, located on beautiful Anna Marie Island, Florida, is the place to be, and not just because they have unforgettable meals, including locally sourced seafood. The Ugly Grouper has your favorite craft beers and cocktails, along with live music every day. The Ugly Grouper is family-friendly, able to host private parties, and has the biggest grouper you've ever seen. The Ugly Grouper is the place to be on Anna Marie Island, Florida. Tell them Indiana Sports Beat sent you. Go to theuglygrouper.com for more information. When it comes to apparel and promotions, Freethink has you covered, literally, whether it's 24 or 200 shirts for sports leagues, businesses, or groups. Freethink Apparel and Promotions can also create your very own merchandising store. Freethink Apparel and Promotions did it for Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and they can do it for you. Whether it's screen printing, embroidery, digital printing, promotional products, vehicle wraps, or anything else under the promotional line. See what Freethink Apparel and Promotions can do for you at freethinkapparel.com.
At Ben Davis Chevrolet and Ben Davis Ford in Auburn, we're your one-stop shop for all of your automotive needs. We have the area's best selection of over 300 vehicles, including new cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs. Plus a huge selection of pre-owned vehicles in stock. And if we don't have what you're looking for, we'll find it for you. We also have top-of-the-line service and parts, plus a collision repair center, and we're competitively priced on everything. For sales, service, collision, parts, and more, we do it all. Come see us today or visit us online at bendavischevrolet.com and bendavisford.com.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company mobile studios from Orlando down near Montverde. Zach Osterman joining us now. Zach, I'm going in to see the Montverde Invitational this weekend. Trent Sisley and his group, so it'd be interesting to see those guys play. Utah Prep is down here as well with AJ DeBanza and Keith Smart. So looking forward to that. How's your week been?
I suppose we're finally getting the snow melted, so I can't complain.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a big sloppy mess out there now, but huge weekend up for Indiana as they take on their arch rival Purdue tonight in a game that's not set up for them to win. I mean, in a lot of situations, you're not going to have an expectation for Indiana to win this game, but it's not that they cannot win this game. They have the talent. If they can get things together, if they can find the defense on the three-point shooting of Purdue, if they can impose their will, and that's the thing. Can Indiana impose their will on Purdue instead of the other way around?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think that is probably always, kind of one of the key questions in any sort of road game in particular. I mean, it is kind of hard, to be honest, to find obvious sort of pressure points. I mean, Purdue is, very, very efficient offensively. Obviously, Indiana's defense, has regressed, frankly, they're averaging almost point or a little over on an adjusted basis, 0.1 points per possession more in conference play than they are overall. And that may not sound like much, but you play a 70 possession game, that's 7 extra points. Purdue's the second most efficient team in the conference offensively. They're first in 2-point percentage. They are fourth in 3-point percentage if we're talking just Big Ten games. And on the other side, this is probably a conversation unto itself. Indiana is last in the Big Ten in Big Ten games alone in 2-point percentage, which is just remarkable when you consider, obviously, number one, how many twos Indiana shoots. They're 22nd in the country in points scored on twos or percentage of points scored on twos. You've got Umar Ballo, who's finishing almost 65% of his twos. You got Malik Renew, who's just coming back to health, but is on the season anyway, finishing almost 61% of his. The fact that Indiana is still so efficient or inefficient, I should say, offensively inside the 3-point line is just, kind of hard to fathom. But the point is, if you and I'm using Ken Palm right now, but if you toggle over to Indiana's sort of Big Ten specific stats, Purdue is very good defensively, and Indiana is struggling badly at that end of the floor from an efficiency perspective. And Purdue is, at least one of, if not the best offensive team in the conference. And while Indiana there are some marker points that have improved for Indiana defensively in the last couple of weeks, the overall profile really still struggles. Now, but depending on how healthy Malik Renew is, I think Indiana might have some advantage inside because Purdue doesn't have that, that Zach Edey presence that it once did. I think this is a big game for Miles Rice and Trey Galloway. You've got to find a way for those two players to outplay Braden Smith, essentially. But on the whole, I mean, you don't want to sugarcoat it. This is going to be a very difficult game for Indiana. Purdue's got a lot of guys that can shoot the three, a lot of guys that can space the floor. They've got, I would argue probably the best point guard in the country. I mean, his assist rate is just insane. He's first in the country in assist rate at 46.8%. That is just a staggering number, and it doesn't go down in conference play either. It's 46.3% in conference play. This is going to be an incredibly difficult game for Indiana, and if they win, then I think it's fair to say they will have earned it.
And yesterday, Matt Painter and his availability talked about the different looks that Indiana offers, and that is regarding Malik Renew being in the game or Luke Goody being in the game. And I'm just wondering, what can Indiana do? What will Purdue throw at Indiana when they have Renew and Ballo in the game versus when they have Goody in the game and Renew is not?
Well, I think Purdue's kind of default lineup this season or default starting lineup has often either been a two big lineup with Kaufman, Wren, and first, or I think that their second most used lineup has Cam Heide at the 4 and Kaufman, Wren at the 5. So the point is Purdue can match that. I don't know that anybody can, when he's playing well, can quite match Umar Ballo. I think Ballo's been really, really good for Indiana this season. I've not fully understood some of the criticisms of him. But the trouble you have if you're Indiana is if Purdue can get to a place where they can catch you in those two big lineups, they have some very mobile but very athletic 3-4 type players like Miles Colvin, like Cam Heide, that if you make Malik Renew go guard them out in space, especially if his mobility is still limited by his injury, that becomes a problem. I think, if you're Indiana, this is kind of one of those, proactive, reactive conversations in terms of, okay, on the other end of the floor, though, if it's Kaufman, Wren, and Heide, for example, shouldn't Indiana have an advantage in the post? And that's probably where you start getting into conversations about how, Fletcher Lawyer and CJ Cox and Miles Colvin and obviously Braden Smith can really hurt you from outside. My point is, it feels like Purdue's got the lineups to play Indiana straight up when it wants to. I think that there are ways in which Indiana's posts can exploit two big matchups. the question is, to your point about Luke Goody, how much does Indiana want to see someone like Malik Renew guarding, for example, somebody like Cam Heide or, Miles Colvin if Purdue really goes small? I don't know what the answer to that is.
Luke Goody is probably, ironically, just being on this team for the first year. Ironically, I think he's going to be the guy that probably wants to win the most. He's an Indiana kid. Purdue is, the natural rival of Indiana, but he knows what it means as well. They're a good team. So just taking down a good team is always an incredible feat. But to do against your rival and whatnot, he's one of the guys that I think can quickly absorb what this game means, because that used to matter. It used to help or matter into the game, actually. Sometimes it wouldn't matter what the records were. That's not the case right now, I don't believe. But Indiana has talent. They should have or could have won the Maryland game. That Maryland's a very good team. So I don't know if they have the talent to beat this team, especially in West Lafayette. I guess a lot of fans are just hoping that they can keep it close. But it's Matt Painter's words yesterday were a little they were kind of comical, but he seemed like he was being nice, but he runs what he runs, and they are what they are, and they're pretty good at it. And I think he is just going to go straight at Indiana with that and say, stop us if you can.
No, I mean, and again, that's where I think atmosphere comes into. It's Purdue's building. Purdue is gonna, Purdue is very confident in what it does. Obviously, so much of the discussion in the last couple of years around Purdue is centered on Zach Edey. I think this year has proved that, Edey is a really, really good player, but the system is also part of what makes Purdue. Not that I think serious people understood that for a while, but it dispelled kind of any notion that Purdue was basically just good because of this big battering ram center who had no future in the NBA, because obviously he's doing fine in Memphis now. But the to your point about like sort of Purdue saying we're going to do what we do, I think particularly in Mackey, where you're going to have the crowd behind you, where, one or two kind of maybe big moments early in a game is going to ignite that student section. Yeah, you're going to want to be in a position where you're saying to Indiana, you come stop us. You have to solve the problems we pose, not the other way around. And if you want to go back to thinking about the last time Indiana won in West Lafayette, which is the only time Indiana's won there since 2013, which was 2 years ago, obviously Jalen Hood-Schifino had 35 points. Indiana kind of went the other way in that game. Indiana said, you have to figure out a way to stop us. And I think it's not, it's not by accident that the two players that play the most minutes that night are Jalen Hood-Schifino and Trey Galloway. And Indiana essentially says, we're not even going to – and I know Trace Jackson-Davis had some foul trouble, but Indiana sort of says, we're not going to contest the post battle. We think our guards are better. We think our guards can outplay your guards. Of course, that was at that time Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer were freshmen. And we're going to let them just kind of go to work. And Purdue really just couldn't figure out a way to stop it. I mean, in that game, Hood-Schifino was obviously so good, but I come back to two. Trey Galloway was 13 points, 3 made threes, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, 0 turnovers. Like that was what won that game. And if you're Indiana, the question is, do you have any matchup in this game? And I'm not sure what the answer is, other than maybe if you can get McKenzie and Bako going early offensively, or if you can get Umar Ballo playing assertively in a way that gets at least one of those Purdue bigs in some foul trouble. Do you have a matchup in this game that can make Purdue play it on your terms, that can disrupt their game plan or their rotations or, the way they want to move bodies in and out, and say, instead of you, sort of setting the tone and the terms of this game, we're going to do that. And I think to your point, Purdue is very much going to come out believing it can do that on its own. The question is, can Indiana disrupt it?
besides this game at Purdue tonight, up next they've got to go to Wisconsin, a place that they haven't won since Bob Knight was coaching. They come back home to face a Michigan team that is kind of needing a get right game, really. And then there's more than that. And then you got the Dusty May story that kind of just slides into that. Then they go, then they have to come. They travel to Michigan State, I think, right? They travel East Lansing
to
take on Spartans.
At Purdue, at Wisconsin, Michigan, at Michigan State. Yeah,
this 4-game stretch, it's wicked tough for anybody. But if they were to lose all 4 of these games, or is that you think that this team would be in danger of kind of collapsing after that? It's hard to go through.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't think it's unfair to ask whether Indiana is going to go 0-4 in this stretch. Again, like if I refer back to their KenPom page, and I'm looking at it up here, KenPom gives them a 13% chance of victory at Wisconsin, a 17% chance 13% at Purdue, 17 at Wisconsin, 16 at Michigan State, 37 at home against Michigan. Now, I did not take finite math. And my understanding of probability math is not great. I'm guessing if a mathematician were here, they'd say, but the probability of Indiana winning at least one of those games, even though they're the underdog in all 4, the probability is probably over 50% that Indiana wins one of those just on the balance of things. But it's not unfair to say Indiana is a pronounced underdog in each of the next 4 games. And 3 of those 4 are on the road against top 20 teams, top 20 or better, Big Ten contending level teams. So it's not unfair to ask whether or not Indiana is going to win a game in the next 4. I hesitate to say collapse, because you never know what pulls a team back together. I've covered plenty of teams that you thought, oh, they're collapsing. I mean, you think about Archie Miller's second year when they lost I think they lost 7 in a row, and then they won 1, and then they lost 5 in a row, and they were 4-12 in the conference. And we thought it was over. We thought it was done. And then they came back and won their last 4 regular season games, played their way back onto the bubble, and then immediately lost to Ohio State in the Big Ten tournament. You think about even, last season, I think there was certainly a feeling at one time when Indiana had lost, I think, 8 of 10 and was 6-10 in the conference, that the season was just kind of spiraling out of control. And Indiana put together a 5-game win streak that included wins at home over Wisconsin and Michigan State. So, you never want to say like, oh, a season's going to collapse. It's all over. But I don't think it's unfair to ask whether Indiana can win any of these next 4 games when, the models and the analytics say they're going to be a meaningful underdog in every one of them, even the Michigan game at home. And I also don't think it's unfair to ask if Indiana does lose these next 4, how much fight is going to be left, to kind of start to dig out the other side. Because, listen, if you want to get into the last 6 games, Indiana's, according to KenPom, Indiana is an underdog in 4 of them. Now, there are a lot more coin flips there. They're a 41% underdog at home against Ohio State. That's a coin toss. They're a 44% underdog, or 44% chance of victory, I should say, at home against UCLA. That's essentially a coin toss. But then so is Penn State at home and Washington on the road. So what it felt like Indiana lost when it lost the opportunities in front of it at Northwestern and Maryland was the ability to build on Ohio State and feel like Indiana had sort of re-exercised some control on the direction of its season. And the problem you have now is it becomes a lot harder to do that when, as we've talked about for months, we knew this schedule was going to get a lot harder at the back end. It isn't getting easier. Ohio State is certainly doing Indiana some favors. They've won 3 in a row. That win keeps getting better and better. But it's not going to hold this team up forever. And if you start losing at a certain pace, then it can weigh a team down. It can snowball a little bit.
We've got to take a break. Zach Osterman
The IU insider for the Indy Star is with us. I'm hoping you can just stay for a few minutes on the other side. I'd like to talk just a little bit about football after the portal is closed, see where Indiana is. Appreciate Zach being with us from the Indy Star. Make sure you're giving him a follow and be a subscriber. Keep local papers alive. We've got more coming up. Back with it right after this on Indy. Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth's sour mash bourbons, sweet mash, and hard road ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana, as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive. If you're looking for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Realty at Cheryl@IndyHomePros.com or 317-701-0838. 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore help you find the home you want today. Whether it's a night out with the family, after work with colleagues, or catching the game with friends, Bubba's 33 is the place for you. Bubba's 33 offers a mouthwatering menu of selections that are all made from scratch every day. The portions are big, but the prices are small. And with over 50 big screen TVs, you'll never miss the big game. Bubba's 33 Pizza. Andy Moore Honda is Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer for a reason. Buy a new Honda and get a 3-month break from car payments. That's right, no payments for 90 days. That includes the all-new, all-electric Honda Prologue, and you get it for just 0.9% financing. Or the 2024 Honda Ridgeline Black Edition or the Honda Accord LX, both for just 1.9% financing. Get more to your door from AndyMooreHonda.com, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer and your best place for new and used vehicles. Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company Studios mobile unit today on this Friday. Glad to have Zach Osterman, the IU insider from the Indy Star. And the portal has closed, at least for now, for college football. And Indiana seems to have come through it pretty good, Zach. They did a lot of what they did last year, but they added more pieces from Power 4 programs. And then Kurt Signetti also found other pieces that he thinks fits with his program that came from where multiple mid-level schools as well. He likes to find the talent that he likes to use. And obviously he's got a pretty successful track record of doing that. Indiana seems to be set at the quarterback position, although the backup situation may be a little thinner than it has been, with Tyler Cherry not on the roster, not planning on being on the roster this year, but they brought in the I forget where the kid came from, but yeah. But as far as the starting quarterback, they're set pretty daggone well. Fernando Mendoza, 2 years left, and to be able to get 2 years out of a guy, that's going to benefit Indiana greatly, I would imagine, over the course of these next 2 years.
Yeah, and I mean, Grant Wilson, you talked about, was brought in as a depth piece. You see some schools that are able to do this. Michigan State did it with Tommy Schuster last year. Just go get an experienced guy who, is probably coming in knowing it's an uphill climb for him to start, but he's just thinking, okay, it's a year of Big Ten football. And it's worth saying, like, I mean, I don't know this. I don't know if people think this is just lip service, but, for athletes at a certain point in their academic career, like, sometimes there's appeal in going to a place that has a really good grad program, whether it's a Kelly program, a SPIA program, whatever. There's sometimes if you are realistic in some shape or form about what your future is in the sport, sometimes it can be an opportunity to use the sport to further your education in terms of the opportunities you're going to get academically. But no, I mean, Indiana, yeah, Tyler Cherry is going to sit out the year. His knee was not going to be ready. Sort of the first thing we reported after that injury was suffered in Notre Dame prep was that he was questionable to return for the season, that he was going to miss the offseason because of the injury. It sounds like they're just sort of going to be patient with it and just say, just sort of chalk 25 up as a lost year, and he's going to serve as a student coach. But I'm not sure exactly how the designation works, but he is. If he's able to return, he can be essentially reactivated onto the roster in 2026. But Indiana still has, both Mendoza's there. You talk about, yes, I think it's very helpful that you get Fernando Mendoza for 2 years, not just one. Although I do know NFL folks like Mendoza, and if he had a year comparable to Curtis Rourke's year last year, maybe you'd only get him for one because he'd be draft eligible at that point since he's a redshirt junior. But you have the younger Mendoza, you have Wilson. Indiana's going to sign Jacob Bell next week from Naperville North in the Chicago area. So you're still pretty well set, I think, from a depth perspective at quarterback, because you're going to have guys, who've been around at least through all of spring. Obviously, Mendoza and Cherry know the offense going back more than a year now. You're going to have depth there. You'd still probably want Fernando Mendoza to stay healthy, of course, but even having, a bit of that insurance, I guess, with an experienced backup in Grant Wilson, or if Alberto Mendoza just plays like crazy in the spring and summer and fall, then maybe he's the number 2, but then he's earned it. And so you're not worried about that. I think Indiana's in a good spot at quarterback.
Well, no doubt about that. And other positions as well, as they have a lot of the wide receivers that are held over. Elijah Surratt, one of those guys, but and kept E.J. Williams. So they did a lot of good by just keeping some guys. And the funny thing is I was talking with someone the other day and looking through the schedule definitely, it ramps up next year. Their 3 toughest games, I think, are the 3 road games against Oregon, Penn State, and Iowa. And Iowa is, man, they picked up that quarterback from South Dakota, so their offense is even going to be ramped up a little bit more as well. But I think Indiana can win at least one of those 3, and if they do, I think that Indiana's looking at a potential 9-2 or 10-2 season again, which that we're predicting that. But the sheer fact that comes out of my mouth with a straight face, it's hard to get used to, but it's a reality, and it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but that's the reality of the nation now.
Sorry, you broke up there at the end. What was that, Jim?
Just talking about their schedule and the talent of next year. I think that they're going to be a better team. They may not have a better record because of the road games that they have, but I think that they win at least one of those 3 road games. And I think this team can go 10-2. And if they can do that with their schedule, they're back in the CFP.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the fact that obviously it's got to be the right sequence of 10 wins, but I would be surprised if 10 wins doesn't put them at least on the playoff bubble next year, because at least one of those would have to be at Iowa, at Penn State, or at Oregon. And if 2 of them were road games and you lost one somewhere else, then your worst case scenario is one of those road games is compensating for a worse home, a worse loss somewhere else down your schedule. I mean, listen, Indiana spent 2024 like apologizing for its schedule kind of incessantly, even when in the end Indiana wound up playing not only the 2 teams that contested this year's national championship, the 2 teams that contested last year's national championship as well. Sometimes you just got to ride the luck of the draw, essentially. I think the advantage the schedule still has for me, and I don't think this is a small thing, is the slow ramp up. All 3 non-conference games come at the beginning. All 3 are at home. what is it? It's Indiana State, Old Dominion, and I'm forgetting who the third team is all of a sudden. But it's not a, you don't have like a Louisville at Louisville. You don't have a conference game to start the season, which is something Tom Allen had to deal with a lot. You get kind of this relatively sort of steady buildup, just the way we saw Indiana do this year through the first 2 weeks before they played Illinois. And that just allows you to make so many mistakes and to tinker with things and experiment with things and have sort of this controlled environment where, you think, with the benefit of hindsight, we can think back to that Florida International game and just think like, man, like a team that wins 11 games really shouldn't be losing or beating Florida International by only 24 points. But Indiana was allowed that game to go make some mistakes, to go work through some things. And then obviously Western Illinois after that, before it had to play UCLA. Now Indiana gets the same thing. It essentially gets a 3-game preseason before it gets a really big home game in week 4 against Illinois. And I think that, there's going to be a lot of understandable discussion of the more difficult road games, the fact that they lose Ohio State and Michigan, but now they're adding Oregon, they're adding Iowa, which is kind of a its own sort of challenge. They have to play what looks on paper like a really, really good Illinois team that's probably going to be having playoff conversations of its own, frankly, through the offseason. But I don't think it should be overlooked that Indiana's going to get that slow build at the beginning, because that really makes a difference.
Yeah, we saw that all throughout the season last year. It was, and I've said it a number of times, that Indiana could not have arranged that schedule any better themselves. They kind of did buying out of the Louisville game, which they may have been able to handle Louisville at that time. I'm not sure, but it definitely gave them the confidence, the ability to do the things that you just talked about, and give that a new team the confidence they needed to go forward. And you mentioned that Illinois team, they're on that schedule next year again at home against Indiana. And the way they played this year, I've already seen a lot of people thinking that they are on a lot of lists of teams that didn't make the CFP last year that they might expect might make it next year. So there's a great opportunity for Indiana at home as well. So they're going to have the chance to get some quality wins on their resume next year, and it won't look quite as barren this as it did this season.
No, again, on paper, Indiana's going to have a rougher road, but more opportunity. But, the flip side is, we looked at the schedule last year, and I was one of those people that picked Indiana to win 8 games, but I still thought Michigan was a no-go. I thought Michigan State on the road would be a lot tougher than North, that just generally their road games overall would be a lot tougher. If you think about it, other than Ohio State, which obviously goes in the other direction, Indiana, what were the final margins of victory on the road last year? It was like 29, 17, 37. That you thought on paper Indiana had a decently challenging season or schedule last season. You had some teams in there that, if like their preseason rankings and their preseason analytics had held up, would have made Indiana's wins a lot more impressive to the committee. We just don't, in the end, you just never sure. You just don't know. What happens to Indiana if, I know people don't want to hear the hypothetical, but like, what happens if one of Indiana's most important players, blows out a knee in non-contact work or weightlifting or whatever? Well, the same's true of Illinois, though. What happens if Luke Altmaier, just goes down with some freak injury in spring practice and his season's over, and suddenly Illinois was a 9 or 10 win team. Now maybe they're a 7-win team, and so suddenly it's so hard to peg anymore with the way rosters turn over, and also frankly just how lopsided these conference schedules are, or imbalanced, I guess is the better word, these conference schedules have become. But I think in all likelihood this is going to be a more difficult schedule for Indiana, but also a schedule that is much more
rewarding.
Rewarding is a good word. I was going to say packed with opportunity, but one word is better than 3. But it is a much more potentially rewarding schedule if Indiana can pick up some of the wins that, maybe look a little bit more like coin flips right now.
And one of the areas that Kurt Signetti knows and has worked on
boosting is the offensive line. Obviously, we saw what happened in the Notre Dame and Ohio State games. So they had everything else. The defense was lights out. And speaking of defense, Brian Haynes, Indiana, getting him signed to that deal. That's huge, being able to keep those guys. They lost Tino, but keeping a guy like Brian Haynes, man, that defense was legit one of the top defenses in the country. They played even Ohio State and Notre Dame. The defense was good enough for Indiana to win if they had could provide better offense. But all things are coming together. It's not going to all happen at once, but that was a pretty damn good first season. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun next year.
No, I mean, obviously Indiana still, kind of got a couple irons in the fire with the Notre Dame transfers, Rocco Spindler and Pat Coogan. Those guys, you get more time. The portal's technically closed for, let's say, quote unquote, normal players. Teams that play deeper into the playoff, their players get a little more time on the back end to go through the portal process. And especially with guys like that, like there's every chance. I know that Indiana's been in classes now for a while, but there's every chance like they can get enrolled into some online courses. Obviously Kelly has some really good online MBA programs that people are a part of. So like you're never, it's never as with the older players, with guys who maybe already graduated with at least one degree and now they're working on another one or maybe even a third. There's always like a little bit more leeway. There are some unconventional solutions that can get a guy in, kind of at the 11th hour like that. And I don't make recruiting predictions anymore, but I do think Indiana's got a good shot to get at least one of Coogan or Spindler. And that obviously reinforces that offensive line even just that little bit more, which Indiana, as you said, needs. You've got, probably got both tackles covered. Drew Evans goes down with the Achilles injury late in the season. Those can be tricky to come back from, especially for, guys who need to bear, and I'm not calling linemen fat. Please understand me. I was one of them, but linemen just bear more weight. They just do. And that Achilles injuries can be trickier on guys that just have to carry more weight around. So you got Khalil Benson, you got Bray Lynch. If you could add somebody like Pat Coogan, then now you can kind of share those two guard spots between Benson, Evans, and Lynch. Not rely on Evans too much too soon. Coogan can hold down center, and then you can kind of fill in the backfill with young guys. But I think that I think Indiana's, to my impression, seems like it's in a good spot to at least add one of them. We'll see. But I think they probably just need about one more interior offensive lineman, one way or the other, because you can also bump Bray Lynch to center if you need to. So maybe just one more interior line guy, one way or the other. And then I wouldn't be surprised if Indiana's still poking around maybe for some impact at the edge after the spring season. Maybe a little bit more depth in the secondary. We'll see. If nothing else, I think if you're Indiana, you're always just kind of keeping your options open. And there, of course, comes a point when you run out of money, right? Like this is still essentially a salary cap now that we're talking about. And at a certain point you bump up against the ceiling of it. But, Indiana's in a good spot. I don't think there's a ton more they need. I wouldn't be surprised if their receiver would be another one where I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of dip their toe in just to see what's there after the spring season's over. But I think for Indiana, we've talked so much here about the guys they've added or could add. To me, quietly, the most important thing they did was they didn't lose anybody they probably didn't want to. At least not the top line guys. Maybe you wouldn't have wanted to lose like a Jameer Johnson for depth. But Jameer Johnson, I think, looked around and saw Indiana bringing in two other corner transfers and some promising-looking young players coming up and said, maybe my playing time is going to be somewhere else. I think if you're Indiana, the names you really didn't want to lose were Cooper, Surratt, Smith, Camara, Fisher, Farrell, Pons. Like none of those guys really even seemed, at least publicly, to ever flirt with the idea of seeing if the grass was greener somewhere else. And that was, I think, the most important piece of it, because if it's not a fight to keep your roster together, then you can take care of that quickly. And then all you're doing from there is adding and accentuating and improving. And I think that's what Indiana's been able to do.
Zach Osterman, the IU insider for the Indy Star. Make sure you're giving him a follow and be a subscriber. Keep local papers alive, man. I grew up reading the newspaper. Loved doing that. Zach, I appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much for the extra time today. I know you're busy, and we really appreciate you.
Well, we're all just gearing up for West Lafayette tonight. So thanks for having me, Jim.
Absolutely, buddy. Thanks. A good one. There's Zach Osterman joining us from the Indy Star. We've got more coming up here from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios, and we're back with it right after this.
Andy Moore Honda is Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer for a reason. Buy a new Honda and get a 3-month break from car payments. That's right, no payments for 90 days. That includes the all-new, all-electric Honda Prologue, and you get it for just 0.9% financing. Or the 2024 Honda Ridgeline Black Edition or the Honda Accord LX, both for just 1.9% financing. Get more to your door from AndyMooreHonda.com, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer and your best place for new and used vehicles. Ugly Grouper, located on beautiful Anna Maria in Florida, is the place to be, and not just because they have unforgettable meals, including locally sourced seafood. The Ugly Grouper has your favorite craft beers and cocktails, along with live music every day. The Ugly Grouper is family-friendly, able to host private parties, and has the biggest grouper you've ever seen. The Ugly Grouper is the place to be on Anna Maria Island, Florida. Tell them Indiana Sports Beat sent you. Go to theuglygrouper.com for more information. When it comes to apparel and promotions, Freethink has you covered, literally, whether it's 24 or 200 shirts for sports leagues, businesses, or groups. Freethink Apparel and Promotions can also create your very own merchandising store. Freethink Apparel and Promotions did it for Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and they can do it for you. Whether it's screen printing, embroidery, digital printing, promotional products, vehicle wraps, or anything else under the promotional line. See what Freethink Apparel and Promotions can do for you at freethinkapparel.com. Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth's sour mash bourbons, sweet mash, and hard road ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana, as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company mobile studios on this Friday. Glad to have you guys along. Tyler Smith with us as well, contributor to the Hoosier.com. And actually, you've heard me talk about the article that we posted and it had to be taken down. Tyler wrote that article, but he wrote another one that is a year old, and I reposted here this past week. I think it was, Tyler, wasn't it?
That's right. Yep.
It read like you wrote it this week. It was the same old, which is utterly amazing. But it was literally, there was no way someone would have known that was not talking about this season had they read that.
Yeah, maybe change a couple stats here and there, but basically the entire article talking about how at Indiana it shouldn't be this difficult. It's something I could absolutely repost, and it's pretty crazy. It's unfortunate for fans that it's kind of a similar position to last year, but yeah, absolutely.
Need to get Claude a hat. We've got to get some hats. We're going to get all that stuff back in. We're bringing all that stuff in house. To be honest with you, I want to be able to donate to the Boys and Girls Club. So we're going to, we had the merchandising going, but we're going to end up bringing all that in house. So we'll have all that stuff, by the way. Big game for Indiana, of course, tonight as they take on Purdue, and no one's expecting them to win that game. And I don't know how much the expectations would be, if things weren't even like they were right now. Purdue's playing really well. Indiana just doesn't. They just don't have a system is not the right word that I'm looking for, but there doesn't seem to be flow with what they're doing. When I watch their offense, the ball movement is just wonky. The passes are not crisp. I watched the IU women's team, and I was like just shaking my head because the ball movement was fast and furious. The passes were quick and crisp. And when you do that, you make the defense adjust to that. The faster you move, the faster they have to move. You wear them out. You create opportunities. You create a little confusion. This team, Indiana offense, they don't do that. They just try to overpower you in the middle and then kind of luck into a 3-point shot. It seems like.
Yeah, and you look at that, even that last game, I mean, all the talk was on that last inbounds play, but when they called a timeout, instead of letting, Miles Rice go make a play there at the end, what was the play that they end up drawing? They pass it into Malik Renew and everybody stands and watches, and then it goes out of bounds, and that's when that out of bounds play happens. So maybe identity is the word you're looking for. We're still trying to figure out, is their identity just to play through the post and that's it? There's not much else that you can really hang your hat on when you watch this team, and they're going to have to play a fairly close to perfect, if not perfect, game to win at Mackey. And I've seen some fans talk about how Purdue's lost there this year, but to me that makes it even less likely that they would lose again on that court, especially against rival Indiana, especially after waxing Michigan in their last game and playing well right now.
Yeah, let me quick programming note. Evan Miyakawa, he was going to be with us today. He's going to be with us Tuesday. And actually, he's going to be with us with Mike DeCourcy, which is going to be fun because obviously Mike does the bracket busters for Fox and Big Ten and the Sporting News. And, of course, Evan is all the stats. He came out with a new stat, and the other day he had an article that we'll talk to him about when he joins us. And in that he doesn't think the quadrant system is viable anymore. He thinks that's something that could go away, and he explains why. And I'll let him do that when he's on Tuesday because he's a hell of a lot better at it than I am.
I think Indiana would appreciate that since they are 2-7 in the quad one, and one of those may not last as a quad one.
Yeah, but here's the amazing thing. I think it is Penn State that is 1 and they're like 2-8 in quad one and quad two games combined. They've got one each. They've got one quad one win, one quad two win. But yet they're 20 spots higher than Indiana in their net rankings. They had a win over Purdue, which was that's a difference maker. Not getting that win, not getting a quality win just kills you. And Indiana does not have a quality win. I don't know that they've even beaten a team yet that's going to make the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, not only that, and then when you look at some other computer rankings, you look at the margin of deficit that this team continues. Fans know about all the double-digit and sometimes 20-plus point losses, which really kills you in some of the computer rankings. Not all of them, but obviously that doesn't impact your record in the quad games. But these other computers, it's not a good look for the team to be 67 and net 62 Ken Palm. I mean, there's just a lot of high numbers what you're looking at for this team's resume.
Yeah, looking forward to it, but mostly if I'm being honest, which it's early to pack it in, and I'm not suggesting that you should ever pack it in, but man, it's going to be a rough 10 games for Indiana fans. These next 4 games they're brutal. We already know that, but there are other games after that aren't going to be easy. And I think Indiana ends at 9-11 in the Big Ten. I actually thought that almost all year once I started looking at the schedule. And 18-13 final record, not nearly close enough to get into the NCAA tournament. And even if they were offered an NIT invite, I don't think they take it. It's a little embarrassing, number one. Number two, they're going to be looking for a coach.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the high probability at this point. I was talking to one of the bracketologist friends that I have, and he was saying minimum 7-3 rest of the way for Indiana to even have a hope. And, odds are, Zach was talking about, odds are going probably 1-3 in the next 4. So you're looking at having to win the final 6 to have a chance at the tournament. So awfully tough road ahead. And, they still have Purdue at home. They got, Penn State at home won't be easy. They got to go to Oregon. So there's a lot there to even go 9-11. If they do go 1-3 in these next 4, going 9-11 will even be a challenge down the stretch. But we'll see how they react. And a team that lost by 20 and 21 last year to Purdue, if they have any fire and fight at all, then hopefully they bring it tonight.
Scott says that he absolutely does not understand the ire for Luke. Watch him play, and not just his shots. I think you'll notice his desire to win and how he is sometimes the only one trying to be a leader. I'm not going to disagree with that. I think that he is probably the best leader on that team. That's sad. That's sad to say, because there are guys that have been there for 4-5 years. Yeah. So but that's a reality. And I agree with, he does want to win. He has that fire in his stomach. He wants to win. And I think that the only issue with Luke is when he got himself into that social media beef. He shouldn't have done that. That was a mistake, but boom, that's gone. Who cares? Other than that, I don't think that. I think people actually appreciate Luke, and the players just need to play ball. Quit worrying about social media. Quit worrying about the fans. Quit whining about the fans. You're getting paid $500 million. Shut the hell up. I'm like, dude, I'm not. Just focus on what you need to do. And I think that, oops, sorry about that. Damn it, keep hitting that. Why are you worrying about that? They have enough to deal with, and it's just like, they're purposely searching for other things to let it get in the way.
Yeah, and you go back to, even last year's team had some of that, some of that beef online, and then you had kind of the awkward senior night quotes and like some of the stuff that's letting too much from the outside in. And when you're not playing well and you're looking at another season of not making the tournament, that's when it's even tougher. You just got to go play ball. And, what better opportunity for, guys like Luke Goody to make a big lasting impression by going to Mackey and, knocking down 4 or 5 threes and making it a game. But I think for Indiana to have a chance, they don't necessarily need the Hood Schifino performance, but they need a big performance from either Miles Rice or Mackenzie Mbako, and then knocking down some threes and hoping Purdue doesn't go off, because that's the recipe for them to keep it close as opposed to folding and getting blown off the court like they have so many times.
Yeah, let's see who just asked about if there were any. I think it was Russell asked if there's any changes to the CFP. No, there will not be any changes in any way to the CFP until 2026. This contract is a 2-year deal, and it will stay the same. That's why. But as soon as that happens, yes, they're absolutely. I have no doubt they will change the seeding method, which everyone knows it needs fixed, and that's fine. They'll fix it. No big deal. So, well, now whether or not they add more teams, I don't know. That's probably going to be up to how much the SEC whines about wanting more teams, so they can be guaranteed of having teams in, no matter how bad they are, I guess. So there's that. We need to take a quick break, one more break from the mobile Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Friday down in at Montverde for the Montverde Invitational this weekend. Gonna hopefully see some really good basketball. Looking forward to seeing Trent Sisley play. It's been quite a while, but there are several other really good players, including the number 1 recruit in the country down here as well. We'll be back with more from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios right after this.
Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth's sour mash bourbons, sweet mash, and hard road ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana, as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive. If you're looking for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Realty at Cheryl@IndyHomePros.com or 317-701-0838. 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore help you find the home you want today. Whether it's a night out with the family, after work with colleagues, or catching the game with friends, Bubba's 33 is the place for you. Bubba's 33 offers a mouthwatering menu of selections that are all made from scratch every day. The portions are big, but the prices are small. And with over 50 big screen TVs, you'll never miss the big game. Bubba's 33 Pizza. Andy Moore Honda is Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer for a reason. Buy a new Honda and get a 3-month break from car payments. That's right, no payments for 90 days. That includes the all-new, all-electric Honda Prologue. And you get it for just 0.9% financing. Or the 2024 Honda Ridgeline Black Edition or the Honda Accord LX, both for just 1.9% financing. Get more to your door from AndyMooreHonda.com, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer and your best place for new and used vehicles.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Friday. I hope you had a great week and are going to have a great weekend. Jim Coyle with you as always. Great games last night in the Big Ten, like I talked about earlier. UCLA shot 55% in the first half to get a huge win for them over Oregon, 78-52. That's a season low in points for Oregon, number 16 Oregon. They've kind of just been bounced down a little bit. Nebraska bounced back last night, a huge overtime win for them over the Illini. We've lost a couple games here and there, a couple surprising ones, but they had injuries to their best players when that was going on. So the only game in the Big Ten tonight is Indiana and Purdue. So all eyes will be watching if you're watching that, you're watching the Hoosiers and the Boilers. So looking forward to that. And games this weekend, people have mentioned a lot of them. Arkansas traveling to Lexington. That means John Calipari back in Kentucky. Man, that is going to be something. I'm wondering the response, the welcome he's going to receive. I think that they'll be gracious and give him a nice little applause, and then hope Kentucky goes out and kicks the snot out of them, which I think they will. Arkansas is not very good this year, to be honest with you. So feelings. There you go, Russell. But yeah, that'll be a fun game. Ole Miss and Auburn. The irony, that's the irony, not the Irony Bowl, but the irony game. Two coaches that Indiana fans would love to have. Bruce Pearl is just, I don't think that he is going to be in the mix. He's going to be 65 years old, and it's not that 65 is too old, but you're going to be doing this again in 4 years, 5 years, and that's not what Indiana fans want. They want and need a guy
whether it's Chris Beard, whether it's a Dusty May, whomever that is in that age range that can coach for 15 years. And there's nothing to say that coaches like both of those can't do just that. TJ Otzenberg from Iowa State, Ben McCollum from Drake. There are several good coaches out there. Don't forget, I mean, people get stuck, especially Indiana fans. They get a lot of Indiana stuff stuck in their minds. They get certain things just stuck in their heads. Look last year. Look at Louisville. You never even had heard of Pat Kelsey. He was at the College of Charlestown. Look what the hell he's doing. Complete brand new team. All 13 roster players are new. You saw what he did to Indiana, but they're having a great season right now. Kentucky, Mark Pope. Utah, was it Utah State? What the hell? I mean, those were off the radar hires. And look at the success. Get the names out of your head. I mean, I just said a couple, but they're just the natural ones. They're not going to be the only ones, especially if the reach out is not met with welcome hands. They're going to have to back channel this, but when can they do that? When the season's going on, it's kind of a iffy thing. Obviously, no school wants their coach talking to another school about another job while the damn season is going on, which they won't. They'll back channel it either through their agents or whatever the case may be. But even that's a distraction. And a lot of the coaches, unless they're in kind of a bad situation, I think they tend to stay away from that stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly it happens and how quickly it is rectified. Kurt Signetti, that one was fast. It happened in 3 or 4 days, I think, from the ringing the bell of when Tom was let go until they hired and brought in Kurt Signetti. I think the only difference here is the postseason going on. Every coach that you're going to want is going to be playing in the postseason. So that's going to extend it a little bit. It just puts it out into April, which it's doesn't affect anything. Is because if you're talking to them by then, you know whether the interest is there or not. That's what they're going to have. That's what they're going to gauge at first. Is there any interest? Is it even worth talking? If it's no, thank you. We'll move on. If it's yes, then the back channeling will commence, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm really interested to see if Indiana will, if the opportunity arises, will they give Chris Beard a crack at it? I don't know. I really don't. The Dusty May thing, I know that he's going to be hard for them to pass up. And yes, I know he's in his first year at Michigan, but I keep saying this over and over. He has what has to be the lowest buyout of any first-year Power 4 coach. I'm not going to go back and research every new hire from last year, but if they were hired at a Power 4 program, a solid program, and Michigan is a little bit more than that, but their buyout is not going to be $5 million. Mike Woodson's buyout is 3 times double that. Chris Beard's buyout is 3.5. Nate Oates, $18 million right now. I can't remember what Mick Cronin's is, but I was looking at his last year when Louisville was looking for a coach, and I'm like, no, he's out. He's kind of bad. I think I can't remember exactly what it is, but I remember thinking that his contract is not in his best interest. It kind of handcuffs him to UCLA, which great job by UCLA, but it will be interesting to see how public this is. The football hire was not. Dolson was able to do it quickly and without any of us finding really anything out, which, at the end of the day, you're going to find out anyway. So, and yeah, we all would love to get the information first, but who does it really matter? Because as soon as it comes out, it's going to spread like wildfire anyway. And I'm fine with waiting to find out, but I am waiting with bated breath to see who it is, because that's what's going to be interesting. What do you have to look forward to? The last time it was a head scratcher, and that's, I think a lot of people was like, well, okay, well, we'll give it a try. But there wasn't the, oh, wow, yeah, man, they landed a good one. Even with Cignetti, that wasn't quite the case, but it did not take long for him to establish himself. He did that right off the bat. If you don't believe me, Google him. But he did it on purpose. And you have to love a coach that has that kind of chutzpah. They need that. Right now, Indiana basketball is just dead. It barely has a pulse. There's just no passion. There doesn't seem to be that winning or losing is the worst thing in the history of the world thing. I mean, I would like all my players to hate losing way more than they enjoy winning. And I don't know if you see that enough. Not lately here, at least. Not lately here. How do I feel about Billy, Eric? I'm not sure who's Billy. Did I miss a reference to somebody earlier? Who is Billy? I don't know, Eric. Throw a last name up there. I must have missed who you were talking about if that was brought up previously. I'm not sure who Billy is. Tyler, do you know who they're talking about there?
Is it Billy Donovan, the rumored coach for the last 20 years?
Oh, please. Yeah. Well, that does remind me, though. The Brad Stevens thing, it's going to come up again.
Yep.
I've already been hearing it from some people. I truly believe that ship has sailed, man. It would be a step down for him to go back to coaching college and to go back to resurrecting a program. He's at the top of his profession at one of the most iconic sports franchises in the history of sports. So, and yes, Indiana had great tradition. That's all they have now is great tradition from the past. I just don't know that would happen. I don't know about Dusty May. I don't know that he would make that move. But again, I cannot get past his low buyout. And fortunately for Indiana, both of the two names that come to the top of my head, which are Chris Beard and I was just talking about it, Dusty May, both buyouts. Chris Beard's, I believe, is $3.5 million. It's crazy. It's absolutely nuts because it seems like the last two times Indiana was in this position, they did not really have great options to get, and they kind of ended up where they ended up, except for Fred Glass just went out and hired Archie. He thought that was the deal, but it was not. Man, I cannot tell each and every one of you guys how much I appreciate you, especially today. Whenever we're out on the remote, things can go awry, but for the most part, things seem to go pretty well, but that's a big part of that is you. Without you, we have no reason to be here. Big thanks to Tyler Smith as well, jumping on and helping out today. We greatly appreciate him. Make sure you give him a follow. Keep up with everything that he does as well. I hope you guys go out and have a great weekend. Enjoy the game tonight. Keep your eyes open. I'll have content throughout the weekend from here in Montverde. Hopefully have interviews with Trent Sisley and
Keith Smart, and everyone that I can get. But it starts today, man, and we'll get on and get with it. But thank you so much. Go out and have yourselves a great day. Until the next time, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.